Tiny house prepper.
Live simple, live free.
Hi there, I'm Bill.
And I'm Elizabeth with Tiny House Prepper.
Today we want to compare prepping and homesteading, and we're here with Barry
and Molly
with Empty Hammock.
Now we live in a tiny house.
And we're preppers.
And we live on a homestead.
First thing we want to talk to you about
Wait a minute, why don't you guys just come over here? It'd be a lot easier.
Wait, what?
No, you guys come over here, we can talk face to face. It'd be a lot easier that way.
That's a 10-hour drive.
Oh, don't worry about that. If we talk face to face, it's easier than all this.
We wanted to finish filming today. How are we?
Whoa, whoa.
Hey.
Oh.
Hi.
Hi. Oh my goodness. Well, what?
Tell you what, let's go in the house.
Okay.
Okay.
Welcome everybody to my kitchen. Those of you who don't know, these are my parents, Bill and Elizabeth. Pretty much most of my life, so so there you go.
And we've been thrilled to have Molly in our life for almost 15 years now.
Barry, it's interesting to me the name of your channel, Empty Hammock. Why did you name it that?
Because if we're out working and doing things in the farm, we can't be sitting in a hammock. So
Okay.
empty hammock it's true. We don't have time to sit around in a hammock and be leisurely, so
Right,
we come up
okay.
with that name.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it sticks.
Yeah,
So
that's cool. We have different philosophies from what they have. We consider ourselves preppers and they're homesteaders. Well, what's the difference? Prepping, really, what is the goal of prepping is to be prepared for a future emergency, whether that be a short-term emergency like, power's out for a week because of a
Hurricane.
hurricane or something. Or a long-term, the economy crashes and the end of the world scenario. Our goal is to be prepared with what we need for that end time, for that long-term emergency. Whereas I think homesteading basically has that same goal in mind, but homesteading has a whole lot more. It's much larger and more encompassing than prepping is. You have any thoughts on that?
yeah, I mean, even talking about like what people would consider to be self-sufficient, to be able to prep, to gather all the food that you would need for a certain amount of time, versus being able to make and continually produce all the food that you need. But even the phrase self-sufficiency, what do you think about that?
We kind of think it's a misnomer because true self-sufficiency, if you were going to rely only on your own person and your own skills, what would that truly look like? And it would be eating wild edibles, hunting with pointed sticks or something. It's not what anybody's goal is, I don't think, anymore.
Well, we need each other, we need other people, and there's just certain things that you're going to need to obtain from other places. Now that's where I think another one of the differences comes in, is that I think realistically for a prepping idea, that's a limited period of time. You're set up that way, that it's basically a limited period of time. And what I've kind of seen with the whole idea of homesteading is that you're realistically doing everything that you can. Growing all the food you can, producing all of your own thing, figuring out ways to heat in ways that are sustainable. It's a sustainable lifestyle, but it still requires other people, and you still need things from other people, in other places.
I hear all the time, oh, we're going to be completely self-sufficient. Well, you can't. That's a lie. You can't be completely self-sufficient. Eventually, you're going to run out of something that you can't produce, or that you didn't have a store of in your basement. I think the biggest way to be self-sufficient is community. Even with strictly prepping or with a homesteading scenario, a community of people together, that each person has a different thing that some of the other people don't have, or
Skill sets.
different skill sets and different items. that you can barter back and forth. You know, a lone person out in the woods with a pantry full of beans isn't going to last very long.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
You gotta have pork along with it.
yeah.
I think tying into this a little bit is something that I've actually been thinking about even just very recently. And that's that I think this is much more obvious for a homesteading mentality, but I think it's true for prepping also. There are many things that we are doing now and things that we're setting up and establishing and having ready in our lives that are benefiting us now, that we don't have to wait for some kind of a weather emergency or some kind of a big emergency. There's things that have been incorporated into our life now that have benefited us even with where we're living now, that I think is I think for homesteaders or preppers, the more that you can live it in a realistic way as much as you can now, the better off you're going to be in the long run, and I think the better off now.
And I think that sort of goes right into the lifestyle. What is the lifestyle differences between somebody who is a prepper and somebody who's a homesteader? Our lifestyle and what we're trying to teach our children is it's home based, it's home centered. I don't think we're homesteaders, we're home insteaders. You know, instead of going out to eat, we stay home instead. Instead of you know, trying to have somebody else go out and fix something for us, we fix it at home instead. And it's the lifestyle that we have chosen to where we're making our food as much as we can, realistically. We're trying to take care of our own everything with a lot of really hard work, a lot of really long days. It's not easy, you know, and to hear people say, oh, it's the simple life. Yeah, bull. There's nothing simple about it. Nothing simple whatsoever. It's extremely complicated. The simple life would be a 9-to-5 job, and then you go to your grocery store and get 100% of everything you need, and you sit and watch television for the rest of the night. So our homesteading lifestyle is a tremendous amount of work, very busy all the time, trying to support as much as we can realistically ourselves.
Yeah, you know, to be a prepper like we are, we would love to be homesteaders, to tell you the truth, but we just simply don't have the land for it. You know, we own our land, our little tiny house that we live in, our little RV trailer sits on that land, but the land is only 50 feet by 100 feet, and half of that has trees on it, and the property owners association won't let us cut them down. So we have probably about 100 square feet of space that has the sun, where we could actually grow a garden. So we really don't have the ability to be homesteaders, so we have to be pretty much preppers. But as far as lifestyle, what that means is, you know, I can go do whatever I'm going to do at work. I happen to be a truck driver and I'm gone 12 hours a day every day. Thank God I'm home every night.
Yes.
But I wouldn't have the time to be a prepper because I don't have to be a homesteader because I don't have time to go out in the morning and take care of the chickens and that sort of thing. So we just continue to live our lives the way we normally would, but then we buy and purchase and plan for things for the future, which really kind of doesn't affect our everyday lifestyle as much, whereas you have a lifestyle that is totally engrossed in homesteading and in what you're doing here on your little farm here.
Right.
I do have to say though that as we've incorporated things like the wood stove and gotten a few things that we are now using that have been more because we want to be able, you know, we want to save money on heating, but for long-term preparation also. I am discovering, maybe this is part of just living in such a small space too, but I'm discovering that I'm much more engaged now with everyday needs, maintaining the fire, being more connected with what we have to do, because I don't just go into a big house where everything's taken care of all the time.
Right.
And I'm actually enjoying that, you know, and whatever little bit of gardening or things we can do, like growing the mint, it's more complicated to make the tea now, but I enjoy it, you know. And I just a real quick example, I got a handheld little egg beater mixer thing, and I'm actually enjoying grabbing that and using it. So in our little ways, you know, I feel more engaged in taking care of my own life.
Yeah. We'll talk about food. What do we do on our homestead for food, and why is that important to us?
We have chickens that are layers, and this year we're doing chickens that are meat birds. and we've got ducks, and we grow a large garden. And these are things that we've been doing for a couple of years now, and we just enjoy the production aspect of homesteading or mini farming, and I think that tiny house livers, preppers, their lifestyle is more about conservation than production. It's less labor intensive, but you're still mindful. So I think that's a big difference.
That's good insight. I hadn't
Yeah.
realized that, but you're right. You're absolutely right.
Absolutely. And I think for both of us, learning to make better use of what you have and not wasting, and really learning to make the best use you possibly can. Because in order to have what you are going to need at some point, it boils down to production, and it boils down to good use of, of what you do have.
And we still do prepping here on the farm. We preserve a lot of the food that we get, a lot of the food that we either hunt or grow or get our hands on, however. So in our case, we know exactly what the food is, where it came from, as much as we can, and then we preserve it as a lifestyle choice, so that we can have it during the winter time, and so that we can have at least a small store of food should something happen, to where it's in the middle of winter and we're not growing vegetables. We need to have some food, so we're preserving it. With them, it's you're getting the Thrive foods, and you're getting it through an external source. We're coming to the same end. I think in the food aspect, prepping and homesteading are a lot in the same if you get good quality food, like from the company they use, or good quality food from our farm. Coming to the same end is just sort of a different means of getting there.
We're investing more of our time though, and they're investing more of their finances.
That's true. Yeah. And actually, you're younger, and being able to really put the work into it that it really requires. You're doing a great job with that. And I know for us, with the limited amount of space, with the amount of hours he has to work, and now I'm more limited than I used to be. I'm not happy about that, but it's true. I'm grateful that we have other alternatives.
And for us being preppers, it's also complicated by the fact that we also live in a tiny house.
That is.
And so we don't have a whole lot of space to be able to store the things that we want to prep.
It takes a lot of thought and
Yeah.
creative
So
planning.
that's one thing that I really appreciate about the Thrive freeze-dried foods that we use, and that we use it on a daily basis, but we also, that's our long-term storage, is that we don't have to worry about it freezing like you do with canned foods. So we can keep it anywhere. We can keep it in a rental storage unit downtown off-site if we have to, so that's how we've kind of solved that space issue in our tiny house.
It's one of the ways. We'll be talking more about that.
Yeah, but we have a few canned goods, but we have mostly freeze-dried goods and some dried goods, but we have to purchase everything in advance, whereas you're producing and
As we go.
right.
So for the knowledge that I think that a lot of homesteaders have to have versus what your average prepper would have to have, I think that's sort of a wide topic. That knowledge on the homesteading aspect is, if you don't know how to take care of a cow, you're going to kill your cow. If you don't know how to take care of your chickens and ducks and whatever. And even fixing stuff on the homestead, or being able to build something new, or how to grow a garden, and what weeds look like, and fertilizers. And, we're trying to do a lot more of the permaculture stuff, where there's just systems that you have to develop and learn. And it's a lot to keep track of. It's a lot to have to learn. Somebody who wants to say, "Oh, I want a homestead." Well, we're learning and we're failing, and we're learning and we're failing. Over and over. Whereas with prepping, that knowledge requirement, I don't think is quite as big.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, that kind of brings up who can homestead and who can prep. And basically, I think anybody can be a prepper. You could live on the 8th floor of an apartment in the middle of Manhattan and be a prepper, because as long as you have a little bit of extra space to store stuff, you can buy it and bring it home and store it, and you're good.
In fact, I think that's a good idea for everybody.
In order to be a homesteader, you basically have to have some kind of land. Now, you can do that on a quarter acre in the suburbs if you've got a good backyard where you can grow at least a little bit. You can do a certain amount of homesteading. But to be able to do it properly, you've got to have at least an acre or two, I would think.
Yeah.
If you're going to have animals and all that.
Yeah, there's a lot of people, and I don't want to step on toes, but where they get a tomato plant and they have it in a bag, in a seed bag somewhere, and they say, okay, I'm prepared now. Well, it takes time to grow the tomato plant, and you can't live off of one tomato plant. So with a homestead, you have to diversify. There's so many different things you have to do. So you have to have the property, you have to have the area, unless you do extremely intensive beds or aquaponics, to be able to grow the amount of food that a family of 4 would actually need to live. It's a ridiculous amount of food. The caloric intake is just, it's a lot more than people think, and you can't live off of a tomato plant. I'm sorry. But with prepping, like you said, you could live in an apartment and be floor to ceiling in one room and nobody would ever know it's there.
And we have such a high population of this in this country and across the world of people that live in cities and just simply have no means to be a homesteader of any kind, where prepping is really your only option. But I think it's also amazing how much homesteading or growing you can do on just a small piece of property in your backyard if you live in the suburbs someplace.
Right.
Or if you live out in the country, you can get a couple of acres, and that's really what.
Provided you don't live in an HOA that won't let you grow tomato plants.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, like us. We live in a place where, we have some land we could put in some garden, but we got trees, and the property owners association won't let us cut the trees down, so there we are.
Although I'm still planning on doing as much gardening, as much stuff as we can, just because I want to grow the stuff. I want to do it. Can I just real quickly just touch on something that I think is important for people to understand? And I know we kind of talk about and have been talking about the difference between pipe dreams and realism. And one of the things that I think people need to be careful about is, if you grow the food, do you know what to do with it? And is it a good idea if you're going to prep to go out and buy a 50-gallon can of beans or a 50-gallon can of rice, especially if you don't ever eat beans or don't ever eat rice? And so I guess what I'm really trying to say is that I'm sorry, but that 50-gallon can is probably going to go bad before you'll ever use it. If you don't take proper care of everything you're growing, you're not going to get the benefit from it. And one of the reasons we've gone with something like Thrive is, for one thing, it's food that we actually use. So I'm not waiting until a catastrophe happens to try to suddenly figure out how to cook 50 pounds of beans to live on. Because realistically, people are not going to know what they're doing. I've learned to work with what I'm prepping with. And the other is it comes in smaller containers that I know are going to last long enough. And so I just wanted to just touch on that because I remember we've grown crops before of something, a nice crop of it, and I didn't know what to do with it, and I lost part of it to waste.
It either went rotten or we gave it away because we didn't know how to can it or whatever.
So like you said, learning to preserve it is really important. And if you're going to prep, it's got to be something you actually are going to have when you need it. So anyway, go ahead.
And then you have to keep it secure.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
You have to be able to protect it. And security, I think, is one of the biggest issues that most preppers I know have is, how do I, at least the extreme way out there preppers on like TV and stuff, where they've got their 98 guns and their 7,000 rounds of ammo and they're going to protect their tomato plant,
They worked hard for that tomato plant.
I think
That's good.
I think that security in protecting what you have can also be a misnomer. If you live on a farm, it's kind of hard to hide a cow. It's kind of hard to hide roosters and goats that are screaming at you all the time. People are going to know you're there, and to be able to protect all of that, you either have to have an army of people, and if the way that I look at it is it's in God's hands.
Oh, absolutely.
Because if you know, if I did have 95 guns and 10,000 rounds of ammo for each one, I've only got 2 hands. And if the government or a bigger agency comes to my door and wants to shut me down, I'm not going to win.
Yeah, that's
I'm
true.
not going to be able to fight them off. I'm not going to be able to, you know, what are you going to start just killing people in your front yard, and then the military's going to be like, oh gee, they don't want to comply, let's leave.
It doesn't work that way.
You know, so I think that security for a homestead is a little bit more difficult, protecting from starving people who are coming in droves, protecting from animals, protecting from, you know, when the government decides to take over, and, you know, whatever may come. I just put my hands up in the air and say, okay, God, take care of us, because I can't protect our entire farm with, you know, however many guns I have, and I don't have a huge number of guns. It's just, it's hard to do on a farm.
I think that's really kind of one of the places where prepping has a little bit of an advantage, because I think for both of us, our biggest or our best form of security is to remain anonymous, which he was just saying is kind of hard to do when you got, you know, everybody in the neighborhood can hear the chickens in the morning. As a prepper on the 8th floor of an apartment building in the middle of Manhattan, or, you know, something, you can do that, you can prep, and if you do it in the right way, no one will know that you even have anything in there. And if there's, you know, marauding bands of hungry people looking for food, why would they know to go to your apartment rather than any other apartment? They're not, remaining anonymous is the best tool that we have for security. And I agree with Barry that, you know, stocking up with guns, you know, while we support the Second Amendment, that doesn't mean we're going to start a war with a big arsenal of weapons. That just doesn't work.
Yeah, the government is not going to back down.
No, they
They're
won't.
not going to, you know, look at history, look at what's happened in the past with people that are standing up to, you know, they have tanks. I mean, come on, you know.
Well, but even if we're not talking about the government, we're just talking about a gang of hungry people looking for food, and they come, you know, because they think you got food. What do you do?
Well, I tell you,
Something to eat.
I tell you what, I put some thought and real prayer into this, you know, and we talk about the need for community, you know. I mean, if we're in a certain area and things get really hard, I've got neighbors, you know, and I tell you what, if somebody comes to my door and they're hungry and I can feed them, I will feed them. I'll make sure they've got fresh water if there's any way I can share with that. I'll pray that if I don't have very much, that God will bless it, like that widow's cruse in the Bible where she kept helping Elijah. I mean, it's just, if people are hungry, I want to be able to help. And we will need each other as a community, you know. I do think that there's nothing wrong if people are acting like criminals and they're coming and they're hurting to do whatever would be appropriate for self-defense. But the reality is that if things get really rough enough, it is in God's hands. I know that if we have lose electricity for a period of time, that we're going to be able to have some food. You know, this has blessed us already in our life. Hurricane Sandy, we lost electricity for an entire week. We were set up without any problems at all. When I had the stroke and I could not work, I still haven't really been able to work. Until we could get things kind of resolved, we had food. And so even if you're just, you know, talking about short-term things that happen, at least you're not wondering, what in the world are we going to do? Because I didn't have anything prepared ahead of time, especially things like water or being able to have some way of getting heat in the winter, you know. So, but, you know, in terms of some of the big catastrophes, we want to be as ready as we can. I'm not going to go broadcasting everywhere, but if someone does come to my door, you know, God's blessed us to be able to have that, and I'd be willing to share.
So, should you prep? Should you homestead? I think that depends a lot on you. That depends a lot on your abilities, on what you want to do, your lifestyle, where you live.
What your resources are?
Yeah, I mean, it's,
you know?
or should you do both, you know?
Yeah, I really think that the best is a combination of the two, because, like you said, there are things you can't make. I mean, you're going to prep things like toothpaste and toilet paper because you can't produce that,
Right.
you know. But then, you know, on the other hand, if I'm prepping all this stuff and I decide I want to have 1 year's worth of food, okay, great. So the world blows up and I have 1 year's worth of food. What happens at the end of that 1 year? I'm out of everything. I have no way to replenish that. Whereas you might lack toilet paper and toothpaste, but you can still produce the food that you need.
Right.
So having a combination of the two really is kind of the best option to me, if you have that option, which some people don't.
And you know, I don't know if people would be watching this if they don't already feel like there's something they should be doing along this line. But just for generally anybody watching, it's so important to not live our lives thinking that we're always going to have this stuff handed to us and have it exactly be right there, right when we need it. And to be relying completely on other systems outside of our own life. If you can learn how to do something for yourself, learn it. You know, if you don't know how to cook, maybe it'd be a good idea to learn how to cook. If you think about it, what would happen if I didn't have electricity for only 1 week? And you could put a few things in place that later on could save you from an awful lot of heartache.
So, guys, I hope this has been helpful. I've certainly enjoyed having my parents come down and hang out.
I love being here. I love this
yeah.
farmhouse.
I've enjoyed doing this video with you too. It's been a lot of fun.
It's been really cool.
So, make sure you check out their channel, Tiny House Prepper on the
And
YouTube.
make sure you check out their channel, Empty Hammock, on YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, since you're here, you want to stay a couple days, I guess?
Sure, we might as well. You gonna be able to get us home again? when
Yeah,
we're ready?
I'll get you home.
Yeah, because you know somehow the van didn't show up with us.
Yeah.
So
So,
cool, guys.
All right,
We get to
guys.
stay for a few days.
God bless, and we'll catch you later.
All right.
Okay. Bye bye.
Kids, your grandparents are here.
Yay, sweetheart! Oh my goodness, it's so good to see you. We get to stay for a couple of days. Oh, you've gotten so big.
All right.
Fall over.